There is a cancer spreading within the Asian community.
I just wish I was white.
A cancer causing people to lose their identity.
Like an Asian denial.
And even start to hate their own race.
Asian men are evil.
That cancer is white worship.
I just really like that milky complexion.
If you want to have gorgeous kids, marry someone not Asian.
Blue eyes, long hair.
White.
Yeah. White worship is an irrational idolization of white or Western features, ideals, cultures, and lifestyles that cause Asians to view themselves as inferior.
I'm so Asian.
Today, we'll be discussing the factors causing white worship and how to end white worship in the Asian community. That's important because white worship causes Asians to accept and perpetuate racist Asian stereotypes in Western societies.
I'll tell the kids if someone's driving really slowly or just cutting out to say, oh, bloody Asian drivers,
Asian culture is just super patriarchal and misogynistic. Asian culture is just not fun.
So I'm half Chinese, I'm half Scottish.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, I'm half Scottish below the waist.
This over time can cause Asians to become self-hating Asians who are racist against Asians.
Are you a little bit racist? I would say yes. Actually, what I call self-racism.
Those mixed race babies are gorgeous, and it's too late for my kids. They're full Asian.
One of my biggest obsessions in high school was, believe it or not, to marry a white man, and so I could take his last name and lose my Asian name.
There are even Asians who are proud they are disconnected from their Asian heritage.
I forget that I'm Asian sometimes.
Typically, people wouldn't think that I'm Asian.
Who make fun of their parents' accents.
Oh, very good man.
What shame to the family again.
And even argue in support of policies which discriminate against Asians purely on the basis of race. Some will try to find every single excuse to attack Asian culture. Check out this article by an Asian woman who somehow turned a story about 3 Asian women being assaulted by white men into a story about the oppressiveness of Asian culture. But did she mention Western culture? Of course not. Even though the majority of crimes against Asian American women are committed by non-Asian men. And if you think that's bizarre, during a tennis match in 2024, an Asian American spectator called Chinese star Zheng Qingwen a yellow banana.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It gets even worse. Many Asians idolize Western beauty standards so much, they start suffering from body image issues and poor mental health, to the point of undergoing expensive and unnecessary cosmetic procedures. And some Asians just plain hate being Asian. All these harmful behaviors are symptoms of internalized racism, a condition linked to white worship. It's a form of self-hatred whereby Asians believe they are inferior because of their race. Internalized racism destroys people's confidence and self-respect, makes them feel helpless and even turn against their own race. The worst part is, people are often unaware of their own self-hatred and white worship. It's hard to break free from this cycle of hatred. The more Asians experience white worship, the more likely they are to suffer from internalized racism, causing them to behave in ways that result in more white worship and more internalized racism. And we all know that believing you are inferior because of your race will destroy your mental health and the way you see yourself. If we know white worship is so destructive, then how come it's so common amongst Asians?
Yes, Europe is a garden. The rest of the world, and you know very well, Federica, is not exactly a garden. The rest of the world, most of the rest of the world, is a jungle.
European countries have a long history of invading other countries, enslaving the natives, and establishing white supremacy. They believed they had racial and cultural superiority, and felt they were superior human beings, civilizing the savage and backward people of Africa, Asia, and the Americas. White supremacy became embedded in society, and colonized people began to associate whiteness with power and beauty. Being white was viewed as ideal, and if you were not white, then you should be as white as possible. For example, in countries like India, British colonial rule solidified the cultural preference for lighter skin and Eurocentric features, while in Latin American countries, a common ideology is you should improve the race by marrying white people. It would also be impossible to discuss white worship without talking about the United States of America. After the genocide of indigenous Americans, a war for independence, independence and the end of slavery, the USA officially became the land of opportunity. This resulted in mass immigration from all parts of the world. Over time, America would grow to become the most dominant superpower in the world, especially in terms of media and pop culture influence. American culture and Western culture by extension became the ideal for the world to aspire to. But while America was said to be this place where everyone had the opportunity to succeed, it was still very much a country rooted in white supremacy. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Asians were said to be a threat to white society, resulting in murders and hate crimes against Asians. In the late 1900s, Asians were blamed for the economy, resulting in murders and hate crimes against Asians. And nowadays, well, nothing's really changed. I mean, America literally has a $1 billion bill to spread anti-China propaganda.
China, 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 China.
And let's not forget how all Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps during World War II, or how the dehumanizing model minority stereotype was forced onto Asian Americans, a constant reminder they can never be an equal American without being white. To this day, Asian Americans still have to overcome additional challenges in all areas of life because they are Asian. So imagine you are an Asian born in America, and everything around you is telling you white people are better than you, and you are inferior for being Asian. When you take all that into consideration, you can start to understand why so many Asians in the West develop some level of internalized racism and white worship. But we are just getting started. White worship and self-hatred can be intergenerational, passed down from parents to children.
What do you guys think about Asian boys? Look over there.
My mom told me just like since I was a young girl that not to be with an Asian guy.
Why? Well, actually,
I have no explanation.
Is your dad Caucasian or is he Asian?
My father's white. He's German.
I was a teenager and I was with my mother, and we started talking about guys that I would date. Who would I marry? And I remember she said it very matter of fact. She was like, yeah, you most likely will marry a white guy.
You know, my family brought me up to be very assimilated. If I see a bad driver that cuts me off, I'll like go, are they Asian? And my reaction was, oh, you're Asian, you can't read.
Like racism, white worship is learned behavior. No one is born thinking white people are superior or I must marry a white person to improve the race. In addition, many Asian immigrants in Western society believe in assimilation. They don't teach their children anything about their Asian heritage and culture. And when Asian parents make that mistake, you end up with young Asians who have no connection with their Asian background, yet will still face all the challenges of being Asian in Western society, because discrimination, stereotyping, and hate crimes against Asians are about race, not culture.
Go back to whatever Asian country you belong.
Asian piece of
This ultimately leads to white worship and internalized racism. Your nationality and culture can change, but you will always be Asian. Remember that. Furthermore, in many Asian countries, colorism, the belief that lighter skin is superior to darker skin, plays a huge role in white worship because, well, white people have lighter skin.
Get out of the sun, you're getting darker. Darker is ugly. Look at all my white friends. They're not dark, they're white.
Which is ironic because in countries like Australia, a white-dominated Western country, having a tan is often considered more attractive than being pale. So maybe, you know, we should stop basing our value as human beings on the color of our skin.
I prefer white people. I'm not racist though.
Now it's time for my favorite topic. Western media. Western media has an obsession with dehumanizing, denigrating, and erasing Asians, especially Asian men. In Hollywood, the majority of Asian characters are joke characters. It's genuinely bizarre how many high-profile Asian actors have spoken about being pressured to play a racist stereotype. And of course, the face of Asian Americans in Hollywood is not talented actors like John Cho, Steven Yeun, or Manny Jacinto. It's Ken Jeong.
Isn't he the dude from The Hangover that plays the grossest stereotype of an Asian?
I don't think I'll ever play a character just balls out funnier character than Mr. Chow.
Here's a script where you jump out of a trunk and show everyone your micro penis.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in.
Yeah, done. I'm in.
It's fine.
Can I sign up for part 2?
Yeah. Oh, there's 3 of them? Great.
Yeah, it was a magical time. and it just changed my life forever.
Likewise, only 6% of Asian characters on streaming shows have lead roles, with 42% of AAPI characters having some physical proximity to whiteness. This picture celebrating the 2024 Paris Olympics tells you all you need to know. No Asian male athletes and just one token Asian woman, even though 3 Asian countries finished in the top 10. And remember how Western media went crazy with doping accusations when Pan Zhangle broke the 100-meter freestyle swimming record. But when Michael Phelps dominated swimming, he was celebrated by Western media for being a genetic freak. Now, I will say I understand why this happens. You should expect Western media and the white people in charge to want to uphold white supremacy. Yet many westernized Asians only pay attention to Western media. And if you form your opinions based on Western media alone, then of course, you are going to suffer from internalized racism and white worship. Racial abuse can destroy a person's mental health and self-esteem, and even result in symptoms similar to Stockholm Syndrome. So let's talk about the overwhelming racism against Asians in Western society. Whenever you see an Asian guy dating a white girl on social media, the comments are always full of racial abuse. But what if you are an Asian person just trying to exist? That's right, racism. Some people, including so-called educators, even blame high-achieving Asian students for causing anxiety for white students. Bloody hell, some people sure get salty when they lose to an Asian person. And don't forget Western society's #1 rule: collective punishment. When one Asian does something wrong, all Asians are to blame. All Asians are apparently anti-black because one Asian cop didn't help George Floyd.
We Asian Americans have weaponized our proximity to whiteness in order to murder black people.
All Asian men are misogynistic because some Asian girl's dad was misogynistic, even though they don't make the same generalizations about white people, despite the fact many women don't even have rights to their own bodies in Western countries. And of course, all Asians are to blame for a virus originating in China, especially the defenseless Asian elderly living in America. I bet some people genuinely believe all Asians are the same person. You know, let's illustrate Western double standards for a second. For example, mass shootings are frequent in America, often committed by white men, but no one blames every single white person for every shooting, or say all white people are violent. In fact, the opposite happens. Race suddenly becomes irrelevant when a white person commits a crime. Instead, it's, oh, they just had a bad day, or it's because they are mentally unwell, or hey, let's try to redirect the blame onto a minority instead. And how come people don't blame all white people for the crimes of white media elites, or talk about how problematic Western culture is when criminals committing crimes against children are constantly defended? I mean, look, the white American presidential candidate has done all kinds of questionable shit, yet we don't make generalizations about all white people because of his actions, even though he wants to and has represented America.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
And let's not forget everyone's favorite, white people in countries like America and Australia telling Asians to go back where they came from. And if you are one of those people, I'm pretty sure the indigenous population would love it if you, your parents, and your ancestors all f***ed off back to Europe. But here we are. Now, I guarantee someone is typing in my comments right now, Hans, you shouldn't blame all white people for the actions of individual white people. That's racist and illogical. You should stop doing that. You should stop doing that. Stop doing that. Yeah, no. So stop doing it to Asians. Basically, in Western society, if you are white, you are an individual first and foremost. Your actions and beliefs only reflect on yourself, not your entire race. Rightfully so. But if you are Asian in Western society, you are a nation first and foremost. You will have to deal with all the negative stereotypes Western society forces onto you. And it's also your fault every time an Asian person or country does something wrong. That's why, even though I'm against self-hating white-worshipping Asians, I can understand them. It's easy for people to start feeling helpless and fall into despair when they are constantly attacked and discriminated against because of their race. And unfortunately, racism against Asians goes beyond verbal abuse and microaggressions. It feels like every single day you hear about another hate crime committed against innocent Asians, and no one really cares. Compare the scale of Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate. It should tell you all you need to know. And one major reason for this is because all sides of Western politics don't really care about Asians. First, you have conservatives, most of them believing and support white supremacy, and some are just blatantly racist.
The Democrats say, please don't call them animals, they're humans. I said, no, they're not humans, they're not humans, they're animals.
Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Then you have liberals who love to claim they are allies to marginalized groups, except when it comes to Asians. Because let's be honest, Asians aren't as important as other minorities. So much for being allies to everyone facing discrimination.
We don't know if it was unprovoked. What did he do to get attacked?
You know, let's talk about this another time. For now, what's important is we are aware there are many factors working together to cause white worship in the Asian community, which is why there are so many self-hating Asians who are victims and perpetuators of white worship and racism. Essentially, self-hating Asians act in ways which normalize and encourage racism against Asians. It's a perpetual cycle of white worship. White supremacy and racism against Asians lead to white worship and internalized racism, creating self-hating Asians who reinforce white supremacy and racism against Asians. Self-hating Asians are especially harmful because, well, they are Asian. This often allows them to be blatantly racist against Asians without any pushback. Racists will weaponize them, essentially using them to validate their racist opinions. Upstanding individuals who are against racism are less likely to challenge self-hating Asians when they make racist statements against Asians, and people without any preconceived notions about Asians are likely to be negatively influenced by the racist viewpoints of self-hating Asians. Now somehow, quotation marks, self-hating Asians are often the ones who are chosen to represent the Asian community in Western society. I'm very thankful I grew up in Asia before going to a Western country for university. I saw the best and worst of both worlds, and I know what it feels like to be treated as a person and just another Asian. And I understand all societies are flawed because we humans are flawed. And the fact is, we are all humans. Which is why it's honestly disappointing to see so many Asians who are not proud of their heritage, who hate who they are, Asians who genuinely believe white people are inherently superior. White worship, like racism, is learned behavior. And now that we understand all the factors causing white worship, it's time for us to end it. First and foremost, understand, it's okay to be Asian. You are equal to everyone else, regardless of what racists want you to believe. So critically analyze negative messages you hear about Asians. Ask yourself, do those negative messages about Asians actually apply to all humans, not just Asians? And whether they are being spread by people actively trying to undermine you and your value as a human being. For example, all the negative stereotypes about Asians in Western society were created and perpetuated by people who benefit from white supremacy. And objectively, any human being can have those negative qualities, regardless of race. The very same negative Asian stereotypes don't exist in Asian countries. In fact, Asians are doing great. The fastest swimmer is Asian. The best baseball player ever is Asian. Asians have been dominating weightlifting for ages. There are plenty of Asian CEOs and other fantastic role models. You have the ability to think critically, so don't just blindly accept negative messages society wants you to believe about yourself. We must also actively bring awareness to all the factors causing white worship in the Asian community. Most minorities in Western societies grow up being taught they are inferior because they are not white. Remember, internalized racism can be subconscious, and if white worship is all you have ever known, and you are not aware it's a learned condition, then you might never overcome it. To solve any problem, you must first be aware the problem exists. So let's all do our part, because no one deserves to live life believing they are inferior. We must also actively fight back against racism, because like it or not, your race matters and affects every aspect of your life, from daily social interactions to employment and even housing. Because it doesn't matter if you are a third-generation Asian American, you will still be a target of racism, because racists don't care about your nationality or where you were born. They care about your race, and people will make decisions about you based on stereotypes they have heard about Asians. I mean, look, American politics is pretty much all about race and identity politics, so don't be passive or apathetic about matters relating to race. I don't have all the answers to ending racism, but I do know nothing will change if we just remain silent and take it like cowards. It hasn't worked for over 200 years, and we all know what the definition of insanity is. So don't let racists control the narrative. Don't allow them to force you into submission, and stop letting them treat you like a punching bag. Use all the injustice to motivate yourself to become a better person and take an active role in changing society for the better. I encourage you to learn about your heritage, the culture of your parents, the history of your ancestors. One reason why white worship is so common among westernized Asians is because most of them are only exposed to the Western education system, and what little they do learn about Asia will be from a Western or white perspective. If we Asians don't teach our children what it means to be Asian, then non-Asians will. Stop learning about Asia from people who have never been to Asia. There is so much about your Asian heritage to appreciate, celebrate, and be proud of. Don't let Western society take that away from you. Having a diverse worldview will always serve you well in life, and you are much less likely to fall victim to white worship and internalized racism if you are proud of your Asian identity. And don't just rely on Western media. Western media will always cater to white audiences, and Western media will continue to demonize or erase Asians, especially Asian men. So vote with your wallet. Support projects that feature positive Asian representation, and support proud Asian creatives who refuse to be clowns for Hollywood. Call out Asian sellouts who deserve to feel ashamed, and give Eastern media a chance if you haven't already. It's very empowering to see Asian characters who are actual people and not just another racist caricature or stereotype. I keep saying this, and I will keep saying this. We simply must challenge self-hating Asians. I am extremely impressed by the justified hatred the black community has for people like Candace Owens, Clarence Thomas, and pretty much anyone who doesn't positively represent the black community. They make it clear self-haters and white worshippers do not have their support. We Asians simply must do the same because, let's be real, is it really a surprise white worship and self-hatred are so common when the most prominent Asian Americans in traditional Western media are people like Ken Jeong? While social media is full of westernized Asians making fun of Asian cultures, traditions, and accents.
Did David Chang just ask Uncle Roger to shut up?
The movie begins with female Voldemort investigating a scientist.
Emotional damage!
Oh, my dad rocked this. He always...
Every self-respecting Asian must be united against white-worshipping, self-hating Asians who hate being Asian. And if you are a young Asian person, here's the honest truth. You are Asian, and you will always be Asian. And in this day and age, you will have to overcome additional challenges in Western society. Is it fair? No. But you are not powerless, and you are not helpless. And your life certainly won't get any better by hating yourself and your race. So don't become a victim who can't defend themselves. And don't become a coward who won't defend themselves. You are human like everyone else. You have control over your mind, and you can choose the type of person you want to be. So be someone who changes the world for the better. Someone you can be proud of. And show the world you are superior, not because of your race, but because of the strength of your character.